Good afternoon. Eric Arnold back in his sports barn here on Tuesday, April 14th. It's about about 20 to 4 here on Tuesday the 14th. Let's talk a little sports here for once. No virus talk today. Let's just talk sports. I want to give you my top 10 NFL teams of all time. A year or two ago, the NFL came out with their list, I believe, to celebrate their 100th anniversary. They ranked the top 100 teams of all time. I think they had the help of the Associated Press, I think. But they, if you go on YouTube, which you must be somewhat familiar with the thing, they have a number of videos that show the teams. I think they started at 100 and worked their way down to 1. I've got their top 10 list right here. That's their top 10 list. So I went ahead and made my own list because, how boring would that be if you just agreed with their list? So I went through their list and gave it some thought. I gave it a lot of thought, actually. Spent a number of hours working on this. So let's get right into it. Let's compare lists. And then, as you're sitting there quarantined in your house, maybe you can think about your list and see what you think. But they have got the undefeated Dolphins up top, the perfect 72 season, the 85 Bears, the Super Bowl Shuffle Bears, we all remember them with Walter Payton, Jim McMahon. They've got them at 2. The 78 Steelers, the Steel Curtain, they defeated the Dallas Cowboys in Super Bowl, I believe 35-31. The 84 49ers, that would have been the Joe Montana, Roger Craig, Bill Walsh. They beat Dan Marino. And the Dolphins in the Super Bowl, they've got them at 4. They got another 49er team, that would have been the Jerry Rice 49ers. 1989 crushed the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl 55-10. They've got them at 5. They've got the Cowboys, the 92 Cowboys with Jimmy Johnson, Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, destroyed the Bills. I believe it was something like 52-17 in the Super Bowl. They've got them at 6. At 7, they have the 2007 Patriots, 18-1. Now we remember that team was 18-0 going into the Super Bowl. I'm going to say 12, maybe 13-point favorites over the New York Giants, and they lost. They've got them ranked at 7. The only team on the list without a ring. They lost. At 8, the 1976 Raiders. That's John Madden, Kenny Stabler, Cliff Branch, Fred Biletnikoff, Jack Tatum, I believe, would have been on that team. 76 Raiders, 16-1, beat the Minnesota Vikings. 32-14, I'm going to say. Number 9, they've got an old team there, an old black and white film team, pre-Super Bowl era. The only pre-Super Bowl era team on there. It's hard, the league's 100 years old, so there were great teams prior to the Super Bowl era. It's just that no one's really seen them, no one remembers them. All those people are dead now, and it's kind of hard to merge those old teams into the modern era and compare apples and oranges. So this is the only pre-Super Bowl team they have on their list. It's the 62 Packers. That would have been, I guess, what people would say was the best of the Lombardi teams. No Super Bowl back in the day. The AFL was just forming, just getting going. So the Packers, they were 14-1 that season. And then lastly, number 10, they've got the 75 Steelers. again defeating the Dallas Cowboys in the Super Bowl 21-17. Pretty much same cast of characters on the 75 Steelers as was on the 78 Steelers. So that's their list. Now here's my list. Let's work it up. I put the 91 Redskins in there. That was just a phenomenal, kind of a one-off team, you know, not totally unlike the 85 Bears. Joe Gibbs, fantastic coach. You know, that was the Hogs. Offensive lines often have names, but you don't remember any specific player. That team was just basically unchallenged all year. They just destroyed everybody. It says they lost twice. In reality, they really only lost once. One of those two losses was the last game of the year, after it was all locked up and they were playing the Philadelphia Eagles, my Philadelphia Eagles, and they didn't play one starter. I don't even think they played their backups. They were calling guys off the taxi squad just to make sure no one got hurt, and they still only lost by a field goal to the Eagles, if I remember correctly. So that was just a fantastic team that beat probably the best of the Buffalo Bill teams. That 91 Bills team was as good as any Bills team they had up there. And I'm going to say they beat those guys by, anywhere to 2-3 touchdowns. I cannot quite remember the final of that one, but they hammered them. It wasn't close. I think that team should be in the top 10. I put them in the top 10. There you have that. At 9, I note that this was the only Patriot team, and I'll spare you the suspense if you haven't read all the teams here. I took these guys out. I just can't, I can't abide in the top 10 NFL teams of all time, and that's a lot of great teams that we're going to put in a team there that didn't win. They did not win that last game. That just seems to me to be in that top 10 list. That's a prerequisite, hard and fast. Sorry, don't care that you were undefeated going into that game. You lost. You lost Goliath. I'm sorry. No one remembers Goliath. So you lost. And that team cannot be there. So let's find a Patriot team that won. There's enough of them. This was a team that was the third Super Bowl they won in 4 years. 01, 03, and 04. And this was probably the best of all those three teams. You know, Brady had now been in the starter position. This would have been his fourth season. He was rounded into pretty much a superstar at this point. A great defense that team had. Between the 03 and the 04 teams, they might have lost 4 games in 2 seasons. That's incredible. It was a fantastic team they had there in 04. Probably, I would say, the best of the Belichick teams because they won the ring. I mean, it seems like Belichick statistically has teams that might be better than this team, but this team actually won and got there. And he's had a couple teams like it seems like his kryptonite is the Giants. But at any rate, we'll put them up there at 9. We'll put the 62 Packers there. What can you say? One thing I noted about the 62 Packers, they won the championship game. There were no Super Bowl back then, so you played a championship game, and I don't know how they determined where it was played, if it rotated or what, but they had the best record, and they had to go play at the Polo Grounds, or I'm sorry, maybe it was Yankee Stadium. Well, anyway, they played at the New York Giants and beat them 16-7 on the road. So to me, that's another indication of how good they were and why they belong on the list. Plus, they probably had a dozen Hall of Famers on that team. So definitely the Packer team belongs in there. Now here's a team that wasn't on the top 10 list, and I think they definitely belong, and that was the 1998 Broncos team. They were 17-2, and really this is another team that you could probably say should only have maybe been beaten once. That team opened up 13-0, then they lost, and then I think they just rested people, lost again, and then they just destroyed everybody in the playoffs. It wasn't close. No one got close to them. They beat the Falcons in the Super Bowl by 15 points. This was the second Super Bowl win in a row for the Elway Shanahan Broncos. They, the year before, defeated a top 20 Packer team. That Packer team that won the Super Bowl in '96 with Brett Favre and Mike Holmgren, that was a top 20 all-time team. So that '97 Super Bowl was a mega matchup. The Broncos were, I think, a touchdown underdog, but they won anyway. And they really weren't a touchdown underdog. They shouldn't have been, as it turns out. They were underrated. The Packers were probably slightly overrated. But a matchup of mega teams. So to me, you defeating a mega team like that, you deserve to be on this list. And that great Broncos team, like I said, was that close to being an undefeated team. So they belong on the list, even though they're not on the original list that the NFL has. They belong on there, they're on there. Here I put the 89, the Jerry Rice, Montana 49ers. I dropped the Bears down to 5. I gotta go somewhere here shortly with my wife. So that's great. I get out of the house, get to drive around. It's an errand for her job, so it's all legitimate. You know, I don't have to justify myself to the man. But she watches these videos. She's a huge Bears fan. If she sees this before we get in the car, she's going to be mad, and it's going to be a long ride. Because I dropped the Bears off the 2 slot. I just don't think the Bears would have matched up that well with these other mega teams. I think Ditka was the weak link, the head coach Mike Ditka. He's got a ring. But, would he have matched up with Shula? I mean, think about it. His one loss that year was at the Orange Bowl on a Monday night against Don Shula. If Don Shula had his super teams from the 70s, I don't think it would have been close. I think Don Shula would have figured out a way to beat that Bears team. Probably what killed this Bears team was Charles Martin, the guy that knocked out Jim McMahon in 1986, the succeeding year. The Bears were rolling through the NFL again, would have had a hell of a good chance to win another Super Bowl title, and he body slams McMahon on a terribly illegal hit. The type of hit that if it happened today, they would have thrown him out of the league, just like they did Vontaze Perfect. They would have thrown him out of the league. They didn't back then, but McMahon missed the rest of the year. That killed the Bears' chances. They got beaten the divisional round by the Washington Redskins. Probably wouldn't have happened had McMahon been in there. At any rate, we'll never know. But I dropped the Bears down. I think they're one-year superstar status. They just didn't have that extended period of greatness, and I think that's what I've struggled with, because for 1 year they were just unbelievable, and if they played, that 85 team played anybody, I think it'd be a hell of a good game. I put the perfect Dolphins here at number 4. I dropped them down to 4. You're going to say, well, how can you argue with perfection? As you see, I put the team that succeeded them ahead. I think the 73 version of the Dolphins, which isn't even on this list. I think I was the best team in history. They were better than the 72 Dolphins. Yeah, I know they lost once. The second loss was another one of those that doesn't count. Season's over. Last game of the year. We're playing backups. Our playoff position is assured. We don't care type losses. They crushed everybody in the playoffs. And I'm jumping around here. So let's hit these two and then I'll talk about the 73 Dolphins. I moved the 84 Dolphins there. I moved them up one slot. The best of the 49ers. I think that those two teams are very close. They played each other. I just think that I would take the Montana Walsh at their peak 49ers over the McMahon, Peyton, Ditka Bears at their peak. It'd be a close game, but I think I would take Walsh over Ditka. Here I put the 75 Steelers. I moved them up here, and I dropped out the 78 Steelers. That's the only one I'm a little, not sure I did the right thing. The 78 Steelers, dropping them out altogether. I'm not sure I did the right thing there. But I kind of think the 75 Steelers were better than the 78 Steelers. My thinking on that is the main rival for the Steelers in 75 were the Oakland Raiders. As we pointed out here, they're listed as a top 10 team by the NFL. The main rival for the 78 Steelers was the Houston Oilers. No offense, but the Bum Phillips, Dan Pastorini Houston Oilers just wasn't as good as the Kenny Stabler, Art Shell, Gene Upshaw, John Madden Steelers. It wasn't. So I think that the fact that the Steelers were able to ultimately get over not just the Raiders, but get over Don Shula and the Dolphins, that to me made that earlier 70s team better than the 78 team. Another thing about the 78 Steelers that I didn't like so much, they barely, Jackie Smith catches that ball. It hits him right in the stomach in the Super Bowl that year for the Cowboys. Cowboys might win that game. I mean, the Steelers didn't exactly, neither team dominated the Cowboys in their Super Bowl seasons. But I just kind of think that the 75 Steelers, their defense was better than the 78 Steelers. That was my reasoning there. And then, of course, as I started to talk about, the 73 Dolphins, I think, are the best team in history, better than the perfect version of the Dolphins. That 73 team crushed everybody in the playoffs, just blew out everybody. Even the Dolphins people in the documentaries, if you watch them, they say, hey, that 73 team was better than the perfect team. They say it themselves. They destroyed the Vikings in the Super Bowl 24-7. I think that team better than the perfect team. The perfect team played a weak schedule. The perfect team, you may not know this, that Super Bowl versus the Redskins was either a pick'em or the Dolphins were a 1 or 2 point underdog. How can you be undefeated and be an underdog? But they were. That's how little people thought of the competition that the Dolphins had played in 72. I believe that in 73 they proved to people that they were the real thing, and they played a tougher schedule, and they still destroyed them all. I think that 73 team was better. I think this team, the 73 Dolphins, is the greatest team in NFL history. So, that's my list as it compares to the NFL list. Tell me what your list says. I'd be curious to hear that. Put that in the comments. I think this is one of those videos that we can pull up at any point in time throughout the coming days, weeks, months, years, and we can argue about it left and right. But good. Thanks for watching. Be sure to check out some of my other videos when we do start playing sports again, and it will happen at some point. I handicap NFL, college football, Major League Baseball, and college basketball. Those are the sports I handicap. That's what I like to watch. That's what I like to bet. So let's talk some sports in the future. This won't last forever here, this quarantine. So come on back this fall for NFL football, college football, and we'll have some fun. Eric Arnold talking to you, the internet. We'll see you again.